Welcome to Beyond the Bridge with Local Umbrella Media. I'm here at the beautiful IQ Podcast Studios in beautiful Coronado, California. And I have a very special guest today, Mr. Michael Patterson. Michael is the CEO of U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical Research and Development, LLC. Michael, I've known you for a bit, but we've never actually met each other face to face. So it's great to have you in this venue, and thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Yeah. Well, can you, first of all, I want to introduce everyone. Michael has been writing in our publications. He's been writing a monthly column, a beautiful column. I actually brought a couple with me, but I want to thank you, first of all, for getting the word out. We've got tons of feedback about, the educational things that you're teaching people about this often controversial subject. So that's what we're here today, kind of to discover your journey, how you got to where you're at today, where you are today, and how the landscape of cannabis in general has changed over the years and where it's going, and why the perception is and should be different than it was in years past.
Sure. So yeah, I can give a quick overview. So first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be in the publication. I love to educate. My background is healthcare. I'm a licensed occupational therapist and nursing home administrator. I have run nursing homes, pharmacies, laboratories, home health companies at a very large scale. We had one company where I was chief operating officer we ran, which is about $230 million a year annually in revenues. So I'm very familiar with the healthcare side of pretty much everything in America. And I tell people I do a lot of healthcare business. I've been in cannabis now since 2013, and I gravitated to cannabis after seeing hundreds and hundreds of senior citizens in nursing homes addicted to opiates. And so it was one of those aspects of anybody who's been in the United States healthcare system understands how complicated it is. And so I knew that for somebody to really make an impact in the healthcare system in cannabis, they really need to understand the system. And so started in 2013 with U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical Research and Development. Started working with Indian tribes around the country. Back in 2014, they were allowed to grow cannabis on their lands. A lot of them never did that because of the worry about the federal government going back on their word. I think we all realize that the Indian tribes typically don't trust the federal government because they don't keep their word. So fast forward all the way till 2021. Now our company is a global general contractor for the cannabis industry. We currently have a joint venture in Africa with a company called MGMC Pharma Group, and we actually export cannabis products, THC and CBD products in bulk to legal countries around the world. So we currently export from Africa into Australia and Africa into Europe. And so we are also involved in creating the world's largest hemp and cannabis research zone, which will be based in Florida. And so we're currently working to put that together. It will be similar to a Silicon Valley, or if anyone knows about the Research Triangle Park area in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, very similar to that, because we're looking to unite the United States and the world behind a central location where people can come together and really bring hemp, industrial hemp, as well as medical cannabis forward from a technology aspect.
Wow. Well, that's a lot. You're a busy guy.
I didn't get to all of it, but I kept it brief.
Well, we'll let you go on a bit. But anyway, you're in Florida, what you said. What part of Florida are you in again?
I live in Vero Beach, and Vero Beach is on the east coast of Florida, about 1 hour north of West Palm Beach. So I tell people, if you can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from Florida. I'm originally from North Carolina. And I love where I live now because it's similar to the South, but you have a very nice beach. So, and not too crowded.
Best of both worlds. Great. Well, we're in California, as you know, and most of our readers and viewers, even though this podcast goes internationally, most of our readers and viewers are here in California and actually in the San Diego area. So can you enlighten us a little bit about a lot of things are different in California, legally and otherwise. Can you tell us a little more about the landscape here for us, what's happening now, what's happened, and what the future brings to this area?
So California, I love California. I have to tell a short story. So the first time I ever went to California was Los Angeles. It was about 12 years ago. And everybody loves California for the weather. So I told everybody I'm not going to like the weather just despite everybody else. So I get there and I land and it's like 70 degrees with no humidity and beautiful and sunny. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love the weather. So I really love the California weather. So in regards to cannabis and medical cannabis, as everybody knows, in California, you have recreational cannabis and you do still have a medical program, but we all know the recreational cannabis typically is more dominant. So the challenge in California is dealing with illegal sales. So most research shows that about 80% of all sales in California are illegal. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of which is California was the first first state to go legal. And so
You call us country.
yeah, you're the eighth largest economy from last time I checked. So yes, you basically are a country. So when you legalized in 1996, it was a very limited program for medical, meaning doctors didn't need a lot of diagnoses, and you guys were the first, which is fine. But one of the things they allowed you to do is to do collectives where you can grow at home or you can get a bunch of people together to grow, and you weren't allowed to technically make money. Well, the challenge that if you fast forward 20, 25, 30 years, now the state is pretty much set up to do a lot of home grow. In states that we typically find there's a lot of home grow, you see a lot of illegal sales. It's not rocket science.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons that a lot of states on the East Coast don't want to go to home grow, is because they don't want to have to deal with illegal sales. And so a lot of people on the East Coast look at California and say, don't do what California did. Well, that's really not fair because California was the first state to really get this rolling. And
Right.
people say the same thing about Canada now, because Canada was the first major country to legalize cannabis, and they criticize them. But where California is going to be from a business aspect is, once we start moving forward into federal legalization of some sort, you're going to see California just explode in opportunity for exports. Most of the California, not most, but a lot of the cannabis in the United States per gram, if you take the actual weight, a lot is grown in California. I would estimate that almost 30% of all legal sales are actually done in California around the country, just because there's so many people. And so what we see in California is this, when we go legal, is this ability to export around the world, because I have no doubt that the best the cannabis in the planet is in the Emerald Triangle in Northern California. So that is, to me, that's a fact. And I think it's great that California has that moniker on having the best cannabis on the planet that's grown outdoors. The challenge that I find in dealing with people in the business from cannabis from California is California is so difficult because you're your own, like we talked about, you're your own anomaly, your own country. You have all your different rules and laws. And
Yep.
so the challenge is coming from that system in California and trying to come into new systems. Sometimes we find challenges, and I butted heads with some people from California just because the regulation is so different and it's than any other state. And sometimes it makes it challenging if you have a multi-state operation. So the example that I give is California's rules are so different that you have to have a separate compliance company. You have to have a separate management company to really understand the California law. And we do a lot of consulting within our company, and I still defer to my experts in California in the business there, because unless you're there, you really don't understand what's going on, and because the rules and the laws of cannabis in California continue to change.
Yeah, and it's just not cannabis. This wouldn't surprise you, but it's almost everything.
Right.
People try and come into California. It's like a whole new set of rules, a whole new
Right.
set of lawyers, a whole new set of documents. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly why, but that's the way it is. So welcome to our world. So can you tell me a little bit about, I have a note here about ECS, cannabinoid system.
Mm-hmm.
I
The
don't know what that means.
endocannabinoid system. And so
Okay.
that's one of the things, whereas if you're somebody who enjoys using cannabis or maybe starting to use it for medicinal reasons, the endocannabinoid system is a system in our bodies that was discovered in the 1990s through researchers in Israel. And what they discovered is our bodies have this endocannabinoid system, and cannabis has cannabinoids. Well, other plants naturally have cannabinoids too, but cannabis is the most famous. So what we're noticing is that people who take cannabis, the receptors for the endocannabinoid system are all through our body. So typically when people take cannabis, it naturally is an anti-inflammatory. And also, a lot of the receptors for CBD are actually in your gut with the endocannabinoid system, and that's why CBD works very good for gut issues, and also it helps with the neuromotor system. So it helps a lot with seizure disorders. And then you have a lot of receptors for THC in the brain, and so this is why we cannabis benefiting a lot with Alzheimer's patients. Also, of course, it helps with creativity, as we all know. It helps with relaxation. But with Alzheimer's, one of the things that we're seeing that's just very exciting for me as somebody who used to work in an all Alzheimer's nursing home for 3 years is that it actually, cannabis is shown, and THC actually breaks up the amyloid plaques in the brain. So the example that I use is it's kind of like a roto-rooter for your brain. And so it allows the neurons to flow back and forth. And we've seen people who've used cannabis who have Alzheimer's. It's not a cure, but we have seen improvement in memory and cognition. And the number one thing that we've seen with cannabis with Alzheimer's is mood. So if people are listening to this and they have a mother they're taking care of, or a family member who has been afflicted with Alzheimer's, you know, and I know your health is the most important thing. Because if you get sick, who's going to take care of your loved one? Right. And so I encourage you, if it's something to where you can look at for your Alzheimer's-based family member, to really look into cannabis to see if it can help. You can, of course, you can go to doctors there. But the reason I emphasize this is I've seen the trauma and the toll on the caregivers to the point where they physically and emotionally cannot function. I've had just horrible cases. And so people who had living this life and taking care of these people understand, because these are the people you love, and they can become very combative. And so cannabis actually helps decrease the mood to where the anxiety, and it allows you to function and take care of that person. So it's a lot more pleasurable environment for the caregiver as well as the patient, because the patient is not so anxious.
Wow, that makes so much sense. I have personal knowledge and fortunately, I guess I should say, fairly short-lived experience with my in-laws situation. But I can see how stressful it could be. I mean, some people deal with taking care of somebody with Alzheimer's for 10, 15 years,
Well,
maybe longer. I don't know. But
Brad, I got to tell you, one of the worst cases I ever saw was a gentleman who was taking care of both parents. They both had dementia and Alzheimer's, and so he had to pay an aide to come in during the day. So he would sleep, and then at night they would be up all night. So he was up with him, and he could never leave. He was always there. So he never had a respite. And so what we typically see is in America, people don't understand that the caregivers of these people are really keeping our economy and our world going, because somebody has to take care of these people. So I look at cannabis as not just benefiting the patient, but it also benefits the caregivers, because if the caregivers can use cannabis and they like it, it can make them more calm. It can help them deal with these stressful situations and decrease their anxiety, because, as you know, it just takes a toll on the entire family.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine, and I've been there for a short time, and it's very clear to me. So thank you for what you're doing. You mentioned the federal laws briefly earlier. What do you see the future as far as, getting to the next step, so we aren't having that federal state battle here and elsewhere, I guess?
Well,
anything on the horizon?
That is the $1 billion, Brad. So where we're sitting right now is, as of yesterday, Congress, the Senate opened up a bill called the SAFE Act, SAFE, and this bill would open up banking. So to me, that is one of the major things that we need if it can pass. They're wondering whether the Republicans will sign on to it. We're hoping that they do, because this will allow banks to really work with cannabis unfiltered, and they don't have to worry about getting arrested, and cannabis companies can actually bank and get loans, lines of credit, and which is very critical to grow. So we see some optimism there. We also see that the federal government is probably going to decriminalize cannabis. Now, keep in mind, decriminalization is not legalization. All decriminalization means is if you get caught with a certain amount of cannabis below the legal limit, you get a fine. So you don't go to jail, which is important, because we need to stop blocking up minorities primarily for using cannabis illegally. And it's been proven that whites and minorities use cannabis at the same levels. And then, so that's where I think we're going to get this year. A lot of people feel like the Congress should go ahead and legalize fully. I just don't see that happening, because it's such a heavy lift right now with the COVID relief package that came through, and now they're talking about the transportation bill. And so a lot of the Republicans are feeling like they're being left behind, and the tables have turned now since Biden came in. So I don't see a lot of bipartisanship there. But my hope is if we can get the decriminalization done this year and the Safe Banking Act, I think that'll really help. And also, Californians need to really start looking at that specifically in the banking, because if you're able to do a lot more banking there, your cost of production and everything should decline. There's been situations where cannabis companies have to pay up to $5,000 a month just to have the privilege of having a bank account, and that's with no service. That's with nothing.
Wow.
So we need to open that up. It'll open up merchant processing, which will make deliveries easier. There's a challenge. There's a company called Ease in California. One of their former presidents and their CEO are actually going to go to prison. They were just convicted today because they were running credit card payments through Ease, which is the delivery service for cannabis primarily in California. And they were doing credit card payments, and they didn't tell the merchant processor what they were doing. So they were convicted of illegally doing credit card payments because of the federal illegality of cannabis. And so they're probably going to go to prison for 5 to 10 years because they willfully did it for over $130 million in charges. So that was from 4 or 5 years ago. It's just taken that long to get through the process. But I'm excited when we do that, because when we go legal, because California is going to be the mecca for domestic production. And I think they can really service the world down the road. And so just like you have in Central California with all the agriculture, I see the same thing kind of happening with cannabis, to where the mecca for that large scale flower cannabis will come out of California. And then what we expect to happen is over time, we will have imports of cannabis primarily for oil, because the challenge is you have to have so much cannabis to be able to make the oil, which we don't feel there's going to be enough cannabis grown. I know this is kind of hard to believe, but when we go legal in the United States, we're going to go from 5 million monthly users a month in the US to almost 40 million users a month. And so to have that increase in such a short amount of time, what we've learned by going around the world is that it takes a while for develop an entirely new system. And even though the U.S. has been legal in multiple states, to convert over to a federal system and have federal rules and oversight will definitely take some time and energy. And so what we're trying to do is be able to help companies when the U.S. does go legal and bring in wholesale product, mainly crude oil, THC crude oil, to help the processors stay busy and to keep prices within the levels of the black market. Because something that we've learned is that if you can keep prices within about 30% of the black market prices, most people will stay within the legal structure. But when California legalized and started putting on these taxes, specifically in LA County, where people were paying 50, 60, 70% tax, that's why people keep pushing to the black market, is because the politicians, in my opinion, are too greedy. So rather than taking a 16% tax, they want to add on up to, with city, county, and state taxes, it could be 50, 60%.
Yeah. They neglected that sweet spot where people will not go on the dark side. And they just can't abuse them quite that much. Or people, it's just too easy to do. So, well, thanks so much. That was, that's an education. We look forward to anything else you want to add?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is, if people would like to follow me, I'm the most followed cannabis professional in the world on LinkedIn. So you could just look me up, Michael Patterson. It's U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical. You just have to follow me. I'm not able to connect with anybody anymore. If you're unfamiliar, LinkedIn cuts you off followers or connections after around 30,000. So I'm about 36,000. So I've recently been cut off, but people can still follow me, and you can reach me through direct messaging. And I also have a podcast called The Cannabis Report with Michael Patterson. And so if you just go to YouTube and type The Cannabis Report with Michael Patterson, it'll come up. And so I do the show with my identical twin brother, and it's a news show. So we talk about the news. I give analysis. We have an expert guest on to talk for a little bit. And then we highlight some entrepreneurial skills, as well as to highlight people who are doing some amazing things for people in the cannabis space.
Wow. Well, thanks so much for that. And I'm glad you added that. I was going to ask you that, but I'm glad you got it all out there. I want to thank you for taking the time. I know it's kind of late back in Florida, so you probably missed the sunset for being with us. But thanks so much for the articles you've written and for the ongoing articles. It's very popular. We get a lot of feedback from it. And it's for all reasons, it's this is a very a subject everyone's interested in.
And also, and if anybody wants to get a hold of me, if you're not on the emails, if Brad, you can just let me know, and you can connect to me through Brad. And I really am glad, because Brad has not been up front and telling me the good feedback. So I'm very excited to hear that, Brad. So this is good. I put this out so people can become more educated, because the war of prohibition will be ended through facts and data. And that's our goal, is to really bring that forward. And I'll leave everybody with this. Today, it was reported in Canada, they did a study where 32% of senior citizens are using cannabis or CBD on a daily basis in all of Canada. Yep. So cannabis and CBD in the future. Yeah, this is the future. And then this is where we feel cannabis can help save humanity from itself, basically. So that's what we want to work towards and make things better. So thank you so much, Brad, for having me on, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Well, thanks for being here, and look forward to more information coming on a daily basis. I'm going to turn into your podcast. I haven't been on, but I really want to go see that now. So,
you got to see it, Brad. It's pretty fun. We have a good time.
I'll bet it is. I'll bet it is. Well, thanks for joining us. This has been Beyond the Bridge from beautiful Coronado, California. I want to thank Michael, of course, and I want to thank all our sponsors for all of our newspapers and our publications that we put out. And also, I want to thank our sponsors for the IQ podcast, Attorney King, Sequan Casino and Resort, Indian Motorcycle, Serrano's Coronado, and of course, IB Fitness. Thanks so much, Michael. Have a wonderful evening, and thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.